Good afternoon, good evening. I can't hear anyone. I hope you can hear me. It's my pleasure today to introduce Tatjana and Elvir and to welcome everyone to this Improving Practice webinar. Thank you so much for joining us today. This is a really high number of participants. We're thrilled to have you all. And thank you for your interest. My name is Lucy Masebi. I'm a member of the Improving Practice Working Group, and I live and work in East Jerusalem with an NGO there called MEND. And I've been with GPAC for since it began. And we're very happy to be developing this webinar series. There are some slides here that introduce GPAC that I think you can see that will talk to you about GPAC itself. It's a member-led network of civil society organizations working on conflict prevention and peace building across the world in a truly global sense. Our mission is to promote a shift in how armed conflict is dealt with, a shift from reaction to prevention. And we have three core areas of work: informing policy, improving practice, which this working group is part of, and enabling collaboration. Next slide. And we always work with a bottom-up approach, with a people-centered approach. Our network consists of 15 regional networks of local organizations, with each with their own priorities, character, and agenda. And these regional networks are represented in an international steering group. Our working group, the Improving Practice Working Group, focuses on developing the capacity of GPAC network members to enable them to uphold human security principles in their work, people-centered security, by improving the training capacities of CSOs, improving access to GPAC materials. We have as our activities trainings, workshops, learning exchanges, and increasingly webinars. Okay, thank you. That's the introduction. I would like to introduce Tatjana Popovic and Elvir Đuliman from Serbia. Tatjana is now director of the Nansen Dialogue Center, and she and Elvir both direct two different centers. The topic of this webinar is tools for conflict analysis. And I will now let Tatjana speak for herself. She will speak first, and then Elvir. And please, could you hold any questions until the end? Because with a webinar, it's really difficult to have any interruptions. Thank you.
Can you hear me now? Good afternoon to everyone. This is Tatjana Popovic speaking from Nansen Dialogue Center, Serbia. And I'm really glad that my colleague Elvir Đuliman from Nansen Dialogue Center Mostar from Bosnia and Herzegovina will join me and will share this presentation today. We decided to talk about tools for conflict analysis and particularly about conflict mapping and the onion, because we have been using these tools for more than 15 years now, I can say. And in the region of Western Balkans, we work in local small communities that have been affected by conflict. All of these communities are multi-ethnic actually, and inter-ethnic dialogue is in the focus of all activities that Nansen Center do all over the region of the Western Balkans. I wanted you to introduce you to the field in which we work. It seems that I cannot change slides. Okay, I will try to see what is happening. Now it is working. Okay, good. So can I ask participants to mute their microphones because I can hear some background noise. So this is about the field of conflict transformation, first of all, because it reflects really very well what we do. I'm not going to read everything, just to remind most of us what does conflict transformation stand for, in the words of John Paul Lederer. And for us, this constructive change and initiatives that include and go beyond the resolution are really, really important. So we don't concentrate on immediate resolution of conflicts or any type of conflicts that happened in the region, but we first of all invest in rebuilding relationships among people and between ethnic groups. That's why we very much agree with Professor Lederer when he said that conflict is normal in human relationships and that it is a motor of change, actually. We experience that very well in the region of Western Balkans. That's why I'm mentioning that here. Again, it opens up different horizons, and that type of approach actually helped us build healthy relationships in the communities, both locally and globally. For us, that means the region of Western Balkans, that is local, more local than national level, because I mentioned that we work in certain parts of the region. Elvir lives and works in Herzegovina, for example. I have been working a lot in the southern part of Serbia. That is local level. And global level is participation at GPAC network, because all the time we are passing the messages from the ground to the global level. In that way, trying to pass the messages and needs of people that live in the Balkans region to the higher level of decision making, but also in order to share with fellow practitioners from all over the world what we actually do and why we do it. And here on this slide, you can see a quick ID of Nansen centers, I could say. What is our approach, first of all? That providing safe space for interethnic dialogue. In the difficult times immediately after the conflict, it was crucially important that we had that safe space away from public eyes. And then step by step, we were building trust through organizing joint meetings, trainings, face-to-face meeting with political parties, face-to-face meeting with schools and principals of schools and different levels of decision makers in our countries and communities. Raising awareness was a kind of a second phase after we built trust and after our associates from the ground felt safe to talk about our activities. And we worked especially on these themes. Peace education, that is for years actually, since 2000, since the year 2000, we work on peace education in different forms in different parts of the region. Then school mediation, and we have only started working on preventing radicalization among the youth. That's why that theme is not in red. Our main approach is that we tend to stay with people. We don't organize one-time event and then leave, but we simply live in those communities, first of all. I live in Serbia, Elvir lives in Bosnia and Herzegovina. And we establish process, actually we put in practice processes that mean that we need to cooperate with people all the time. How? Like long time dialogue processes, that involve local decision makers, as I mentioned, schools, students, parents. We provide capacity building training for teachers and representatives of Ministry of Education on the themes that I mentioned. But good relationship with decision makers, particularly at local level, are also very important for us. So that means local self-government and the Ministries of Education, because of the topics that we are dealing with. School mediation proved to be also a really efficient mechanism for resolving conflicts, but also for prevention of conflicts, since we are talking within the frames of GPOC network. That is our way of investing in preventing violent conflicts to happen, actually, by providing some skills both for teachers and students through school mediation training, and by establishing mechanisms in the form of school mediation clubs in schools. So that is quickly about Nansen approach. Now I will talk about the conflict mapping, and Elvir will continue later on and introduce the other tool, which is called the Onion. I'm sure that many of you are practitioners and that you at least have heard or worked with a map. It says that here that it is one of the way to present conflict graphically, to place parties in relation to the problem, and to clarify relationships between them. That's why we like to use it, and we found it very useful. So problem, relationships, and the main parties are presented in a really, really simple way. I will go to the map directly so that you can see, and then I will go back to the theoretical part. So you can see here that we have main parties, teacher, tutor, and students, and one of the teachers is separated from the group. I will explain why. The problem is volume of learning, and the students or students community is another party. So usually we have more than two parties. Two parties to the conflict could be considered as the main parties. But when we start analysis, we actually discover that there are much more. So to go quickly back on how to use the tool, first of all, it is important to decide what do you want to map. By what we mean a particular conflict in the particular time. So don't try to map the whole history of a regional or political conflict or conflict within the community. It doesn't matter. Elvir and I talked about it. Imagine what would have happened if we decided to map the whole conflict, whole Balkans conflict on one map. First of all, it will not be possible because the history is really long, as it says here, history of regional conflict. And then if we even attempt to do that, then we'll make even bigger confusion. And our goal is to make a good analysis, so completely opposite. So that's why we choose particular time and actors that we believe are particularly important for certain aspect or for the problem that we define as the crucial at that point of time. This is from the book that is called Working with Conflict. Responding to Conflict is the Organization. And I'm using it simply to explain why and how to use the map. In addition to presenting your own situation, you can try to ask participants to present the map from at least 2 points of view. So if you are talking about interethnic conflict, I may ask, for example, I worked a lot with groups of Serbian teachers and Albanian teachers. So I can ask each group to make the map for the particular conflict from their own point of view. Why is that useful? Because in that way they will present their different viewpoints. How do they see the whole conflict or the story around the conflict? It is good for the comparison's sake and to check if these viewpoints are really so different, or are there some that are similar, how to reconcile the differences if they are different. So usually we put the groups separately in two parts of the room and ask them to do the map independently. So completely independent analysis from the point of view of one ethnic group and then from the point of view of the other ethnic group. Then they come together with the help of facilitator, with the guidance of facilitator. They present and then they answer some questions and try to see where the meeting point or how they can reconcile these different points of view. And here it says really nicely that mapping is dynamic, because it takes into consideration what I mentioned in the beginning, that situation can change. So we presented it as it is, but now what can be done? Who can make some change? Who can intervene, but carefully choosing the moment and knowing what are the intentions to improve the situation, not to make it worse. So what kind of groundwork has to be done? By groundwork, we mean talking to people in the field, preparing them for special kind of talks or processes, and then jointly and carefully intervene in the particular conflict situation. So here I will describe the process as we do it during our capacity building training seminars. We usually ask people to go into the breakout groups and to talk about some problems that have been bothering them for some time, some unresolved conflicts or conflicts that have solution with which they are not satisfied, nor the local community is satisfied. Then they choose one. The person who is the resource person tells all the details of the conflict in the way he or she saw it. So it is again personal perspective, but still he or she also presents facts about what happened and how. Then they define the problem, and actually defining the problem is crucially important. Sometimes when we are caught up in the fire of the conflict, we are not even aware what is really the issue. Are we quarreling because we really didn't get enough time to present something, or because we didn't feel support, or we are quarreling because there were some lack of resources or political will to resolve some conflicts? But then we need to go into specifics and to give really the title, almost the title of that particular problem. Why is that important? Because when you once after you've defined the problem, then you will be able to choose the parties to actually define who are the main parties to the conflict, and to talk about relationships among them. So that's why I here wrote that imagine if as if you're observing situation from the Google Map chapter or from the tallest building in your local communities, and that you take one shot only. So that means one picture of the conflict in a particular time frame. Of course, it doesn't have to be this very minute, but you decide, we usually analyze past events, but we decide to analyze what happened 2 months ago or 2 days ago. And then we may decide to compare it with nowadays situation and see if anything changed meanwhile. So I already mentioned, but just to repeat, during the process, then you identify the parties to the conflict. Are there only 2 of them, or are there more? Usually you discover that there are more than 2, maybe two parties are directly involved, but then when we start talking about allies, then you understand that there are actually the whole groups on one side and the group on the other side. Very important, who are potential spoilers to the peaceful resolution, and who are potential allies, who is supporting this conflict to be resolved in the best possible way, or we call them also stakeholders for peace, those who are trying to help resolve the conflict in the constructive, transformative way. Very important, put yourself on the map. Where are you? If you are the member of the local community, are you directly involved? Are you maybe the member of civil society organization? How can you intervene in the best way? Can you motivate some other structures, some other actors to also intervene? Because you cannot do anything on your own. Improving understanding and perspectives comes from defining these relationships. When you identify all actors, then you write, you use the symbols of the map and you write relationships between them, and that's how you understand the dynamics of the conflict. And I already mentioned about allies. So what are advantages of the map? That it is a really simple graphic tool. We are aware that some organizations use it in different ways. We decided to use it step by step, as I explained. And first of all, to understand relationship between parties, to be clear about the problem, and to see where are the points of intervention. This is the map, and in the map you can see some signs. In the book that I mentioned, you can find the detailed signs. Now you can just see that the main parties to the conflict are presented within the circles. The larger the circle, more influential the party to the conflict is. So you can see here that teacher, tutor, they are a little bigger, and principal also, they are in larger, bigger circles, while students, group of students, and one teacher who decided to work on his own is in little smaller circle. To present quickly the background of the situation, there is, this is happening at one faculty, and there is a group of teachers, of course, who teaches the certain group of students. But one of the teachers decided to give a lot of materials to read, like for homework and for preparation for classes to students. And for some time, students liked it because they wanted to widen their horizons and to read more. But over the time, it became too much, and they simply didn't have enough time to prepare. So the conflict between teacher and student is here defined as volume of learning, that students at one point said that simply cannot do it. They didn't dare to talk to these particular teachers on their own, but since the tutor is responsible for communication with principal and with them, they talked with him first, and then tutor talked to the principal, and then principal talked to the teacher. The resource person in this case was the tutor that was responsible for students, and they had several dialogue sessions, actually, first separately, as I said. Then actually, since the hierarchy is very strong at this university, eventually they decided that it is best that principal talks to this teacher first, and then that teacher talks openly with students. But we can stop at the analysis, so that's how they presented it. You can see the broken line between teacher and student, as it is the sign for conflict. Volume of learning is in separately, but it is connected to it. The pointed relationship points out to the good relationship between tutor and student. Also principal between the principal and the teacher, there is a very good relationship. If you want to put the lines, you can put two strong lines, and then it will be a kind of excellent working relationship or alliance. What else do we have in these shadows on the side? It says students' trade union and other teachers and other students that study at this university. you can consider how these parties, even though they are in the shadow away, sometimes they can be quite influential to the sides to the conflict. For example, here students' trade union could have been important if in the case that principal didn't find solution with the teacher. So that is quickly this tool presented. And I will close soon with finalizing with the purpose of the whole tool. I already mentioned that relationship, identifying actors, first of all, relationship between them, and understanding who is who in the particular situation, who holds what kind of points of view. Also, if you realize during analysis that actors themselves are not able of resolving, then try to see who is the party who is completely away from this situation that maybe can come and intervene. That is third party intervention, but that party needs to be neutral in some way. How do we use it in our own region? We use it, as I explained, for basic analysis of conflict situation, that then lead to deeper analysis of stakeholders and relationships, prepare participants for concrete actions and activities within their work environment, first of all. But we also use it for preparation of longer dialogue processes, for negotiation processes and mediation processes. For mediation, it is particularly important what I mentioned, that two sides in conflict, whoever they are, they don't have to be ethnic groups, of course, that they draw the map of their own conflict. Sometimes it is much smarter to do this than to give them this uninterrupted time to tell their story. You remember this introductory step into each mediation process, because if they draw on the paper, they would be concentrated on that, and they will concentrate on expressing more facts, more accurately facts on what happened actually during the particular situation. But I will stop here because I need to save some time for my colleague Elvir. And since we agreed, I know that he will almost pick it up from here and tell you also how he uses the tool that is called the Onion in his own work. Thank you very much for the attention. I will have to stop the share so that Elvir can share his own presentation.
Thank you, Tanya, very much. Elvir, we're looking forward to hearing you. Thank you.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes. Yes, we heard you just then.
Yes, can you see the presentation?
Not yet.
Okay. Now is okay?
Yes. Coming. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me for this opportunity to repack. Thank you to all participants who are here to listen what we have have to say. And thank you, Tanya, for introduction and your presentation. As Tanya mentioned, we are working for many years in these conflicting areas of Western Balkans. I work in Nansen Dialogue Center in Mostar, in Bosnia and Herzegovina. And basically, all these conflicts are different. All these contexts are different. And often I like to quote Tolstoy when he said in his book Anna Karenina, he said, "Happy families are all alike. Every unhappy family is unhappy in its own way." So that could be applied to conflicts, because every conflict is different. Every conflict has different roots, different contexts, different actors, so many different things. So from this reason, it is crucial to understand the conflict. And to understand it, it's good to have these tools for analyzing the conflicts, because when people are in conflict, they are not aware of so many things. They are so deep in it. And we, people who work with this, in this context, people who want to intervene in these conflicts, for these people, it's also very crucial to understand these conflicts better. So this tool that Tanya presented and the one that I'm about to present are, their purpose is basically that. So this tool that I'm presenting is called the Onion, and it's focused on positions, interests, needs. And somewhere you can find this tool called PIN as a position, interests, needs. So basically, what is it? That's a way of analyzing what different parties to our conflict are saying. Because in conflicts, most often what people are saying is different from what they are feeling or what they wanting or what are they needing. And then this is basically helping us to go deeper from their positions. The purpose of this tool is basically to go beyond the public position of each party and better understand each party's interests and needs, and then to find a common ground between groups or individuals that can become the basis for further discussions. Because in conflict, when we are using dialogue, mediation, negotiations, or any other tools, we want to go deeper. We want to be focused on common ground. And when to use it? This is a couple of situations where it's very useful, and most often it's analysis to understand dynamics of the conflict situation. Because what we hear from people or what people are expressing can be very most often can sound as unreconcilable. It on the first you can get this feeling that there's no way to bring these people or this group closer or together. But thanks to this tool, we can show you how to peel these layers of onion to come to the core, and the core are needs. Also, we can use it in preparation for facilitating dialogue between groups in conflict, because when we are coming and intervening in conflict to facilitate dialogue, we want to use it and go from that. That's one of the crucial steps in facilitating dialogue, to go from position to interests. And then it's also a very good tool to be used as a part of mediation or negotiation process. This is the graphic presentation of this model. Basically, we have different layers. It's like an onion, and then the positions are on the first layer, and then further down, our interests and needs are in the center. This is basic characteristics of each of these layers. Positions are focused on what we say we want. It's what we are saying. It's publicly announced attitudes. Interests are a bit deeper. It's focused on what we really want. And then the needs is what we must have. So basically, the needs are very often related to basic human needs. It's something that we are really not able to give up. It's something that we just must have. And this is especially useful in situations when there are issues, problems, because when things are, so to say, going fine, or in times of stability, when relationships are good and trust is high, our actions and strategies are basically coming from our basic needs. We may be willing to disclose these needs to others, to discuss them openly. We don't have problem to reveal what our needs are. And then when we have this conflict or problem, then we are going through analysis and empathy and the people are able to grasp even our needs before we say it. But in more, so to say, dangerous situation, conflicting situation, when there is big mistrust between people, people tend to keep their basic needs hidden. It's understandable, it's kind of human, because informing others of our needs would make us maybe vulnerable and perhaps give people extra power over us. So this is kind of one of the key issues: how to build trust, how to build communication, trust, and better relations, so people can go down from positions to interest. So because positions are basically, said, it's our public attitude, and if we are repeating it more often, then it becomes some kind of point of no return. We said it once and that's it, and then it's hard to peel one of these layers, basically. So this is key, one of the key things to build trust among people and to go further. And this is where dialogue helps. This is where mediation helps, because these are processes through which we can build trust. We can establish, improve communication, so people could be more open to go to interests, to be more focused on what they really want, and after that also they can be focused on needs. And one of the points of this onion tool is to show graphically, basically, because it's easier when you show it graphically. So when you show graphically, the possibility of peeling away as many as possible of the layers that build up as a result of conflicts, instability, and mistrust. And the long-term goal to achieve this is to improve communication and trust to the point where people can reveal their own real needs and also try to understand and to meet other needs. And that would be like the best scenario of this, not only this exercise, but the dialogue or mediation process as such. And the one other graphically shown situation is this. It's like triangles, or you can also perceive this as this iceberg, where positions are top of the iceberg that is visible, and these two other deeper levels are underwater. So positions are very often far away from each other, and then on top of this it's kind of this sound. Basically, this is the voice, and voice in conflict is coming from the top of the positions, and it's far away, and it's hardly to see any kind of common ground. But more down or deeper we go, there is this intersection part, and this is our aim. This is the place we want to go, we want to come, because to be focused on the common ground, and then when people understand they have common ground, they have common interests, common needs, then it's much easier to build something on it. I will also mention one example from the practice, and also leave some time for your questions or comments. Maybe you have similar issues, similar concerns, similar experiences that you would like to share, or you would also like to ask some questions. So basically, I said we are working in conflicting situation, and one of our fields of work is work with schools, because schools are identified as one of the key parts of conflict. So any positive local community. So as a consequence of war and conflict, most of schools are divided, and children are going separately according to separate curriculum. And this is especially visible in this multi-ethnic communities where they where they are using, basically different ethnic groups are using the same school, the same building, but the teaching process is organized completely separately, like in different shifts, or they are using different parts of the building. So when we started to work there, and then the positions in these schools, positions of the people were focused on following things. Like, we can't work together. That was one position. No options for being together. That's kind of statements. That's the top of this iceberg, this sound that we heard. Then it was very visible, this us and them concept. So it's us, and usually us, we are good, and there is them, and problem is in their backyard, they are the problem. And then when you hear these voices, it can sound as unreconcilable, but when implementing dialogue, implementing improved communication, we are able to go from position to interest after some time, and then we understand other problems, and people are concerned for better conditions for pupils and teachers in these schools, because poor conditions are identified as a problem. Then infrastructure is also a problem in these schools, and then on the even more personal level of these teachers that we work with, they are fed up with this negative image. They are fed up with being recognized as a problematic place, problematic schools, problematic people, whatever. So basically their interest was to build more positive image. Further down, when we come to a level of need, we understood that people are concerned for their needs like belonging, identity, and parts of identity, mental language, culture. They wanted these elements of culture and identity being preserved because they were afraid that they might lose it. So this is the part of this, when you see here, this intersection part. This is something that was common. And then when we reached that common field, and we understood what their really needs are, then we would be able to go further to preserve or to kind of release them from that fear that through dialogue they will lose something. They will lose some part of their identity, belonging, language, or culture. So we make sure that none of these things will be lost, but we can improve things that were identified as interest, like better conditions, school conditions, positive image. So we built some parts of infrastructure, new classrooms where they could come together and work together on benefits of all of them. And after a couple of years, after that functioned very well, we opened this what was called Nansen classroom in this school, and then apply this model to some other school where this Nansen classroom become nucleus of joint activities, of activities where they could just come. And Tanya also mentioned in the beginning this concept of Nansen approach, where this neutrality and all other aspects were provided. So this is one short example from the experience, and I will stop here. So we can have more time for discussions, questions, comments, and all other interventions you might like to have. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Elvir and Tanya, both of you, for your very interesting presentations. It was really important to me to learn from both of you about the mapping, about the onion. I liked the view from the helicopter of the conflict. I found that very appealing. Thank you. And of course, improving and communications is essential And the long-term approach that you take, I feel, is something we can all learn about. I would like to start to the questions with one which reached me through the chat from Wilbert Hedelsloot. I apologize if I didn't say that right, who asks how to act when two or more parties draw a different map from their own point of view and define the problem differently. Would you like to address that, Tanya, perhaps also Elvir?
Yes, yeah. Thank you, Lucy. Yes, I saw the, thank you for your question. I also saw it in the chat. It is a good idea to talk with the whole group first and to try at least to agree on some, on specific problem and to identify the problem actually. And at later stage, even if they define the problem a little bit different, then it will be one or the other aspect of the same problem in the same, I'm sure about that. So if you say that we are going to talk, are we going to have a joint school or no in one small town in Serbia, then they will identify what is the problem that community will not accept that easily, but maybe they will use different terms. Maybe they will say the participants will not accept it, but parents will not accept it, or they will say it is not safe to do that in this point of time. And then when they work in groups, then facilitators always follow up the group work. So we are always there to consult, to clarify. We don't give ready-made solutions, of course, but we ask guiding questions carefully, almost like mediators, and try to elicit the answers from them. Try to actually to make them express in their own way. And then when they present, they can compare, and they can try to reconcile, as Elvir was saying. Do they feel that this problem is mutual, or maybe they see two problems, and not only perspectives, but two problems? And then we'll have to deal with it and to see how to work on one problem at the time. So that is basically, we ask them to be as clear as possible. And usually they make it. Sometimes they need more time, and we allow that because it is important that they, through the process, generate what is really the problem and to talk with their own group. Who are the potential people who can intervene, potential allies, as I mentioned? What can they do from their own position as teachers, as Ministry of, combination of levels, teachers in the schools and ministry, could they support with some time of decision or different type of support, come to school and so on. So that is basically what my answer is. So maybe Elvir can add.
Elvir, would you like to add to that? Thank you very much, Tanya. Very helpful.
Yeah, no, that's basically Tanya covered what I also wanted to say. It's also when people are starting to define problems like netting or something. It's also they are starting from their positions. So it's also, we have to be aware that they are maybe not another layer on interests. People.
We're losing you a little bit, Elvir.
Sorry?
We're losing you. We don't catch, I think, all that you're saying. Maybe you need to be closer to the mic.
Yeah, yeah, maybe it's yeah. Now, is it now okay?
Yes, much better. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, so it's crucial to understand that people need time, and if they are starting from very different positions in the beginning, if they are very far away, after some time that we kind of organize this process, they will hopefully come closer. One of the key things in this is also to try to go from this us and them concept to me and you, to start to see other people from the other side more as individuals, not only as a members of other group. That's something that I have just to add to what Tanya already mentioned.
Thank you very much. We have now 3 more questions. Let me start with one from Irina Dawa. From your experience, which tools are most useful for leaders with very basic education? Take, for example, situations of refugee leaders.
Yes, if I can just continue. I think the best option is combination of tools, because one tool often is not covering everything. So these 2 tools that Tanya and me presented are very good in combination. and then you can take elements of each to combine it. And maybe there are a few other tools like conflict tree or timeline or some others. And so if they combine it's basically kind of watching or analyzing conflict from different angles. So I think that would be very, very useful. And also this it's also good to adjust the tools to your target group. So I see mentioned is leaders with very basic education. These tools can be very well adjusted to these people, because it is graphic. It requires some drawing and things that can be really appealing for people to engage without being, how to say, academic or something like that. So I would just repeat. So the combination of a couple of tools, and then preparation for this would be improved communication, bring people together. Idea would be to have it like 1 or 2 days just to build or establish some kind of communication, so when they can start using these tools more easily, in more relaxed atmosphere. Thank you.
Thank you. Tanya, would you like to add to that?
I agree with Elvir, and preparation is also very important. So these 2 tools, and maybe for refugee leaders, what one of participants asked, I would recommend something that is called the conflict tree. I'm sure it is possible to find it maybe on this beyond the there are several sites, but I'm sure that it is possible to find it, because it talks about the root causes of the conflict problem and the consequences, and it is represented with the tree. So because it is easy as possible, and then mapping, and then the other tools in that order. But I can also try to answer some of the other questions. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you very much. From Jones Shamalambo, how do you ensure trust among parties in conflict?
Maybe we can combine some questions, because I can also, thank you, Lucy, because I can also see them in the chat, because one of the questions is also from Matteo, who says us versus them. So that is the most challenging, actually, that the toughest challenge that we are faced with in any conflict situation. So to build trust when people are in those trenches, us and them, is not easy at all. And as Elvir mentioned, it is good to have some kind of preparation. First of all, we worked in post-conflict situation, and I can give example, but it needs to be neutral, because we also don't want to, we are talking about interactive dialogue, and we have to be very sensitive. So the group of local authorities, decision makers at local level, actually, they were Serbs and the Albanians, and they were kind of sharing power in the municipality, but they were actually almost in the constant conflict over something. So we had immediately after the conflict stopped in that part of the region. It was not as tough conflict as it was in other parts, I have to say. Some fightings were happening out of that town, but not in the town itself. But still, even with that type of situation, it was not easy to build trust. So we used all these dialogue approaches. We talked to representatives of Albanian side first, and then Albanian political parties actually, and then Serbian political party. That meant talking to them separately, sometimes face to face only with one or two people, me and my colleagues. Then we had a combination of multi-ethnic teams. Serbs and Albanians were working in Nansen Center there also, so that helped. So you cannot just jump in between the parties. We are not peacekeepers. So it takes some time, you know, things take time, 3 T's, first of all. So that lasted for some time. So that is a kind of preparation or warm-up phase. And then eventually we announced that we'll have a joint training seminar, again away from the local communities. Like they had to travel for 3 hours in the bus, and that part is in the central Serbia. But the training was led by a Norwegian and British facilitators, with us, assisting with us. When I say us, that means again combination of Serbian and Albanian team. And even then we were not sure are they going to come at all, but they came, and it was not easy seminar at all. So we used many dialogue sessions, separate sessions, joint sessions. We had to accept that there was anger and quarrel in the beginning. And then later we started analyzing and using tools. And there we used ABC triangle. I'm also sure that many people know it: attitude, behavior, and conflict. Professor Galton have a little bit different and context actually. We use it as very important to identify where the conflict is happening and what is the context of nowadays situation again. Based on that, what are the attitudes of people and how those attitudes color our behavior. I don't know how to, or decide. Based on attitudes, we decide how to behave. So that proved to be useful, again, in separate groups, and then comparing and seeing. As Elvir said, many of them found out that they have same attitudes when it comes to the basic needs. Their attitude was that they want to make sure that their small community, first of all, is safe, and then family and so on. So in order not to go deeper, I would sum up that it takes the whole process. So that's, we will recommend some of these dialogue approaches if you need to establish any kind of cooperation between two sides that are completely separated.
Thank you, Tanya. I think providing a list of resources could be very helpful for the participants. Elvir, would you like to add to that about ensuring trust? It's an important topic.
Trust. That's a crucial topic, I would say, because and it's unfortunately there is no recipe, or there is no like easy method to do it. But from our experience, trust is coming over the time, and the first crucial thing is to build communication among people, because very often there is no communication in conflict, and then people are divided across some lines, and then they build their own narratives separately. They have their own media, their own schools. There are stories from families, from street, from different parts of life. and they don't have much or enough or any knowledge about the other side. What they think they know is basically they have these enemy images, there are stereotypes, there are prejudices about the others, and this is how most of people are operating in this context. So what you want to do is to break this enemy image, to deconstruct these stereotypes and prejudices, which is also very hard. But first step is to establish communication, direct communication, when you establish communication, you work on dialogue, you work on listening, open, honest communication, and then people have opportunity to hear things from other side, so to say. It doesn't have to be big things like who started the war or who is to blame, because dialogue is not about it's not trial, it's sharing personal experiences, it's sharing your thoughts, your feelings in safe environment. And then it's one of the key turning point is when people listen something and when they hear it and say, wow, I didn't know this. This is something that I first time hear. Our media didn't tell us that, and then people start to reveal, people start to move from their positions. And over time in this organized, how to say, setting or there, when you provide this kind of context and setting, the trust will be built after this communication and dialogue are established. And this is a long process. It's not easy. There are many ups and downs. There are many people, it's very hard to get over this enemy images, stereotypes, and prejudices. But there is not much better opportunity than this direct communication, dialogue, personal contact, and then this transfer from this us and them to me and you concept.
I could just add quickly, I of course agree with what Elvir said, that we usually tackle the problems that are important for everyday lives of our participants. So as Elvir mentioned, schools, in our case also schools, or functioning or not functioning of the local municipality, which is crucial for lives of the people there. And so it is not only training, training for the sake of training never happens. I mean, these are dialogue sessions where they get some tools and skills, but we always use examples or we simply talk about how to resolve this issue, how to improve communication, how to have better relationships, what shall we do with schools, how to celebrate 21st September Peace Day, for example. So we organize such public activities that are like international days where we gather our participants, but we also organize simply social events. I mean, we climb the hill that is close by this town that I mentioned, all of us, teachers and students. We visit, on one occasion we visited both schools, and then we had picnic close by one school. Then we organize concerts, we organize where mediators present their mediation cases from different ethnic background. We simply organize something that's fun for children. It doesn't have to be useful always. For grown-ups as well, what I said, it is very important that we take them out of their immediate context, at least 30 or 50 kilometers, if not more. When possible, not always, because we all don't have funds always to do that. But these simple, seemingly simple events also mean a lot, like public, like organizing events jointly and so on. Cooking food is the famous one, it, but just to mention that also. Thank you.
Thank you for such full and interesting answers. We have now a question from Matteo Piovacari. I have a doubt. Most modern conflicts are characterized by the fact that groups in conflict justify their existence on the basis of the narrative us versus them. it seems that in these cases, their needs, in order to justify their same existence, is the complete annihilation of the other party. How do you use the onion in these cases? Thank you for asking that question. Either Tanya, Elvir, I think we need to hear again from both of you, please.
Maybe Elvir can continue, because I tried to tackle this question when I talked about trust. So perhaps Elvir.
Yeah, it's also mentioned the onion. It's basically, you know, it's also a question if you know, if some group want to just by wish to exterminate the other group, then basically we are talking about, I don't know, some terrorist groups or something like that. And then it's very hard to talk about this onion. But if their need is to preserve existence, and their position is to basically try to exterminate the others, then we would, I mean, this is of course in theory, then we would need to come, what is their need, what is their core need? If their need is existence, probably the other party's existence as well. So there is some kind of common ground. But if we are talking about, I'm not sure if I understood right, but here what is said, that if one group is their own purpose of existing groups, then it's basically almost hardly or not possible to work on it. It's basically, as Tanya mentioned, we are this approach is not the best to stop the war, or especially stop the huge conflict. This is more focused on community peace building actions, mediation, dialogue in communities where people, and we have this understanding that people want to live in peace, and it's just our need is to help them in that.
Thank you. That's actually a really important distinction. Thank you.
Yes.
Matteo, has that answered you? Okay, let's move on to the next question, which, it's not the last yet. From Andrea Kadar. He says, hello everyone, could you please give us a concrete example when you used one of these tools, the details of conflict, and what ways of interventions the participants shared?
Lucy, thanks. I think that I tried to, also when I gave example, that was my example on local authorities from the South. I think that covered that question, because I tried to join several questions in order to save time.
Yeah,
okay,
I was also
thank
mentioning you. This example with this basically integrating the schools using this approach.
Yes, thank you. I believe also we have had some very clear, concrete examples. I don't actually see any more questions. Are there any more? Is there anyone?
I think there is this one. How can you use culture as a tool to mitigate?
Oh, sorry. Missed it.
Yeah, this is very good. This is if I can immediately answer it, it's very good example, because culture is great tool. When we were working with these groups of people who didn't have anything, who were claiming they didn't have anything in common, they didn't want to meet, they didn't want to work, the culture was this universal tool how to bring people together. And it was it comes from very small artistic workshops. Or it is bringing students together to create some kind of film. It's street art that was a really great thing, to bring them together, to make school environment nicer using street art. music is great. Sports is another thing that can also be tool to mitigate conflict, because building trust, building communication is one thing, and then the next step in this to do, it's not really so much important what they are doing together as long as they are all interested and they all like it, they all want it. And culture is great tool. Is this because a lot of people can identify itself, they create something together, they have resolved, they did something together. It can be performance, we were organizing theater classes at school, so many different options, and from our experience, the culture is a great tool. Thank you.
Thank you. Tanya?
I think that Elvir gave example. I can just mention one more, that I mentioned 21st September, the International Day of Peace. We, for several years, we had the peace calendar competition, so that students in primary and secondary schools, the process was like that, like this actually, that teachers would introduce the whole concept of the International Peace Day. You tell them a little bit what is the theme in that particular year, why we celebrate it, why it is important, and connect it with local community needs to address one of the potential risks in the community, or identify what is important issue at that particular point of time. In one community, they decided to have public event in which they involved the local police. That is one example. But in all schools, they made the drawings and or paintings, and then they would send that to us, like to us as the center. We will form the independent commission that will decide which 12. It is a really tough task because only 12 could be put in the calendar. But out of rest of the paintings and drawings, at least for 2 years, we made exhibition for school children in Belgrade. So that is also one of the ways to engage them in multi-ethnic activity.
Thank you. That's a really nice example to end on. I'm so grateful to you. Thank you so much for this really clear and useful and interesting presentation. And thank you all for the excellent questions also. I want just to remind you that the webinar has been recorded and it will be available on our website at www.gpac.net. And so you can listen again, share it with your contacts. And also I would like to remind you that at the same website, there are useful GPAC tools. There is a conflict analysis handbook. There is a human security handbook, a handbook for multi-stakeholder processes, and many other materials, in case you are looking also for practical tools. So thank you again, especially Tanya and Elvir. This has been a really, really wonderful webinar, and we've had lots of participants. So thank you, and goodbye. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lucy, for excellent facilitation. It helped a lot. And thank you for your attention to all participants who are still there. And to my colleague Elvir.
Thank you.
Yeah, I feel we should be clapping. Anyway.
Thanks.
Thank you. Fantastic.